Thanks for joining us. This is Notepad. My name is Ibrahim Sani. As we venture on into 2023, we want to learn a little bit more in terms of how people are adapting towards working from home versus entering office. We're also trying to explore the items of whether or not trying to work out of a co-space is also still relevant. And finally, we're looking at utility and underutilized spaces in and around big towns, especially those in KL, Penang, Johor, and many others. Joining us in the studio is Stephanie Ping, the CEO of a co-sharing office space called WORQ. Stephanie, thanks again for taking time to speak with us. We've had this conversation for a few times, especially during the pandemic, but it's of course very enlightening for you to finally come over and we do this face-to-face instead of doing this online. This is of course a progression in terms of how we're recovering from the pandemic. And before we jump into all the other conversations, let's do a quick take into WORQ itself. How have you performed during the pandemic and now coming out of the pandemic? Are you thriving, or is there some troubles brewing in terms of trying to establish a co-working space in Malaysia?
Yeah, I mean, I think, during the pandemic, of course, it was difficult for a lot of people, including our clients. And we were there for them because we are pretty financially sound even throughout. We're profitable in 2020 when in the height of the co-working, the pandemic. And we were able to, really be there for them even financially and giving them rebates. Whenever an MCO is announced, right, immediately the next day we will announce the financial assistance so that they can survive through that period. So it's obviously difficult, but now that we are out of it, I can say that business is booming. We're bursting at the seams, for example. We're at like 90% plus occupancy, and our pipeline is like we have a huge waiting list right now because everybody is moving to this kind of solution post-pandemic. They don't really want to get their own office spaces anymore. They don't want to plan too far ahead. They want to be very agile. So this is a really flexible way for them to place their teams instead of getting traditional leases.
Let's talk a little bit more about the timeline that people take in terms of leases. What are we talking about? 1 month, 2 months, quarterly? What's the timeline like?
So it goes from 1 day to we have 3 years as well.
Now, I'm not talking about proposition that you have, but the majority of your clients right now.
Majority takes a year. A lot of them take 6 months, and there's quite a number of them that taking 3 months. So of course, there's the people who come in just for 1 day, and that's also quite a lot of them. But it goes from a spectrum of very few, very short sort of leases to we even have people signing with us for 3 years.
Okay, I'm sure you keep your ears on the ground very closely when it comes to how things are done regionally. How does Malaysia differ between markets, say for instance Indonesia and Jakarta, which I know is actually quite aggressive in terms of co-sharing versus how we're doing it here? Are there similarities, or are we a little bit different from regional markets?
Yeah, I think we are lagging behind regional markets a little bit. So in Malaysia, 1% of office space used are co-working spaces, whereas regionally in Asia, the average is 3% of office spaces are used as co-working spaces. So we have that kind of 2% lagging to the rest of the Asian countries that we can, already latent demand that we can move up to. And then, like countries like China and so forth, their penetration rate is actually 6%. So they are so much more advanced in terms of how much co-working spaces are used. And I think Malaysia is going to go towards that.
Okay, between the gap that we're looking at, Malaysia trying to catch up in terms of being a laggard in terms of how things are done regionally, is this the year where we bring ourselves to parity in terms of how things are done regionally? Should we do it this year?
I think absolutely we should do it this year because companies are coming out of the pandemic. They are needing to scale. They need to hire now, and they have the confidence to hire. But they need to be very agile. They don't want to say, in 1 year's time, I will have how much headcount. They don't know. So they want to say, I need X amount of people now, and then in 2 months' time, I might need more, I just don't know. Or I might need to scale back. So I cannot take a traditional lease anymore. I need to just put my people in co-working spaces and then grow as they need more and more, or even shrink when they need to give up spaces. Easier for them, a lot less risk, and a lot faster reaction time.
Of course, it's rather ubiquitous in terms of how co-sharing providers are offering the services. I'm just trying to understand a bit better in terms of the thinking behind your clients. How do they choose between one co-sharing provider versus another? I'm sure price is important, location is important, but what are the other considerations that come into play when, say, for instance, a business trying to think about a 6 months timeline? How do they decide to go for WORQ versus other competitors out there?
Yeah, I think they look at the whole package, right? What is the secret formula that would make this already very huge market want to use your product? So what we do is we have a mass market value model where I like to say, we're selling like Hondas, we're not selling like Ferraris. The pricing has to be, as you said, just right for them to be able to consume as much as they want and not be too financially burdensome. And then at the same time, it has to be a product that is what they find useful. So the location is very important. It has to be near amenities. All our locations are near, actually stone's throw to a train station. And then lots of parking and this kind of thing. When they find that entire package and then they see the price, hey, it's something that I can work with, they pile on. So like right now, we just in this month, open our 5th site. And before we even open, we are fully filled. So it is something that the market really, really wants, and they pile on board on it.
Let's talk a little bit more in terms of capital structure for WORQ. How are you raising your capital? How are you managing your own cash flow?
Yeah, we are very prudent when it comes to our cash flow and our capital and our raising. We have raised 3 rounds of funds, and in fact, the banks, the big banks, CIMB, Maybank, Affin, and so forth, have extended us loan offers that are very, very favorable because they like our financial profile. So we've taken a loan from Affin. They are great. They're really supportive. And they've given us also really good terms, right, corporate terms. So this means that the company is financially stable. And throughout COVID, they could see this. We definitely were there for our customers, but also we ensured to pay all our suppliers on time. And we were really quite almost relaxed during that situation. So that coming out of pandemic, we are ready to grab the huge market.
In this sector, what would be some of the risks that you can think of when it comes to the impact of your growth story?
I think the risk would be, a lot of business risks that normally people face. So
some peculiarities, at least, for your industry?
My industry, actually, the risk would be, I think, at first, this product was mostly used by smaller companies, technology, kind of startups and things like that. It was not yet mainstream. So whether that market is going to follow on to take on this product, as a storm, and if there's a market, then all the investors will come and so forth. Now we have seen that the data has shown in 2022, they took CBRE, the global real estate company, have taken a survey that says that 7 out of 10 companies are going to be using co-working. That means 70% of companies using office spaces will be using co-working.
But that's global, right?
That's global, yeah. But Malaysia follows the trend of global. So it lags, but whatever happens in the other countries will come to us, just like e-commerce. Like back then, e-commerce definitely caught on much faster in the Western worlds. And then now in Malaysia, people buying things on Shopee and everything like that. It's pretty mainstream. So co-working is going to become that kind of mainstream style of using office spaces as we go along. And they predict that in the next 10 years, co-working spaces, even though in Malaysia is being used 1% out of all office spaces, this number is going to go up to 30%. So it's a mainstream product of office spaces.
I should have done my homework, but maybe you can enlighten us in terms of underutilized or utilized office spaces in KL and big cities in Malaysia. How do we stand in terms of office spaces being used?
Yeah.
Not co-working, but generally speaking, office.
Right? Yeah. Office spaces in 2015, there is 20 million square feet of vacant office spaces in Malaysia. And then in 2022, 7 years later, that number has gone up to 33 million square feet. So there's a lot of vacant spaces. It's called an office space glut at the moment, and that number is rising. So it's quite a serious situation for landlords, and they are coming to us to help them revitalize their buildings.
In what way are they asking you to help?
They want to have a co-working space component in their building as an amenity for their clients. So for example, if they have a tenant inside there, and the tenant may take a traditional lease with them, and then when the tenant needs to grow or add headcount suddenly, or even not suddenly, but they don't want to plan as far ahead, it's very difficult for the tenant to take another floor of traditional lease and whatnot. It's easier if there's a co-working space in the building already, and this tenant can just place their headcount as and when they need it, or even scale them as and when they need it. So then the building is actually providing this capability to the tenants to use. And even like during COVID, some tenants shrink down to very small. The landlord cannot retain them because they're only taking a very small space. So actually, if they have a co-working space component, the tenant will just move to the co-working space, take a small space there, wait until the time that they can grow back again, and then they can grow back in the same building. So, yeah.
We'll go for one short break. When we come back, we'll discuss a little bit more with Stephanie of WORQ. We'll be right back after these messages. Thanks for staying on with us. I have with me Stephanie Ping, CEO of WORQ. Let's carry on our conversation. Because of this, do you feel that the amount of potential for you to grow is actually quite promising? You were talking about the financing prospects are actually quite favorable amongst the banks. The ability for you to raise capital outside of banks, perhaps through fundraising, is actually quite important for us to look at for this year. And then on top of this, landlords are now coming to you saying or asking you to see how they could revitalize the business of renting out the office space. You are hearkening to about 33 million square foot in KL or in Malaysia?
In Malaysia.
In Malaysia. So generally speaking, the business environment looks promising for co-sharing spaces and companies like WORQ. Are you optimistic for this year?
Oh, I'm extremely optimistic. The demand is really strong. The demand is not just coming from small companies now or startups and whatnot. Our latest enterprise customer, which is one company taking the entire space, they have 300 people with us, is a global tech giant. We have another company that is taking 500 headcount of an entire space from us. It's the world's biggest media agency. So all these huge companies are coming to us to take space because they prefer to use this format nowadays, and the landlords need our help. So everything is converging this year, and I think there's going to be a great surge ahead this year and beyond.
And of course, we are also looking at some of the potential of other competitors in this space. Do you feel that they could be a little bit more aggressive compared to WORQ? How do you stand in terms of trying to distinguish yourselves amongst your competitors?
Yeah, I think in terms of aggressiveness, we build the business to be very sturdy so that when it's time for us to be aggressive, we can be extremely aggressive and grow very sustainably as well. So nowadays, it's very important to be profitable, and we are profitable since day one of operation. And up until now, even in the midst of pandemic, we are. So this means that's why the banks are also supporting us, investors. In our last round of fundraising, we have 7 follow-on investors from all our previous rounds, and they're super happy. The reason is because they see that we build our company really strongly, the foundation is there, and then when you have this foundation and the market surges, then you can just keep cutting and pasting lots and lots of outlet, and every single outlet makes money. So you'll be extremely strong financially. You can reinvest that and grow even bigger, and it will be exponential. For this business, you should not do a bleed and grow model like some tech companies, because you will shrink and then you will kind of like explode. But because the demand is so big, if you got a good profitable model, every outlet is profitable, and you grow every outlet, that means every outlet makes money. So you're going to be able to capture that huge market.
Every outlet making money for you guys?
Absolutely. Every outlet has to make money, and every outlet is making money. Our margins are very, very strong. We're about like 30 to 40% profit margin. So every outlet is making that amount of margins. So every time we add something, we just like,
is there an argument that you're growing too slow? Is that it?
Absolutely not, because this business needs you to build the business base very strongly in the first few years. If you take this bleed and grow model and just simply open a lot of outlets, every outlet is a liability because you may not be able to fill it up. And so that really reduces your financial strength, and then investors don't want to invest in you. But if they see that every outlet is making money and that your margins are great, then they would want to invest in you every round. So that's the financial discipline we have to take. That is to ensure that we have that model really pat down, and then from then on it can be exponential growth because every outlet you're not worried, you just keep making more.
Okay. One item that I want to look at is trying to understand a little bit better in terms of the profile of your clients. I'm assuming the vast majority is in the services sector. Is there an idea where you can explore it into, say, manufacturing type of companies or education? Some tertiary universities might come in and use your spaces. What would be some of the, I guess, left field kind of clientele that you might not necessarily have thought about but are thinking about it, and see if you can tap into these kind of sectors?
Yeah, actually at the moment, our Subang outlet, the one on Federal Highway, has a lot of tertiary education institutions over there. They have their offices over there. Usually it's their marketing arm or recruiting arm, and they want to have a kind of a space that is not in their office, so that their front-facing team have that kind of interaction with other businesses and other people, and are also very near to the young users. So manufacturing firms are also using it. Their factories are not in our spaces, but their marketing team, their sales team are actually oftentimes based out of a co-working space because their factories are very far. They're in Port Klang, they are in all the industrial areas, but their sales and marketing team do not like to go there to work. So they prefer to work nearer to the city. Their young team wants something very cool and hip and exciting to work in, and it's a lot easier for them to hire people when they have a nice office space to work in for those teams.
Before we go into some of the macro risks that are affecting us globally and regionally, one last question for work. How important is it for the workforce to have this kind of cool, hip element in terms of trying to attract talent? Is that really crucial, or do you feel that that is nice to have but not necessarily important to have?
I think it's an important thing to have. But more important than that is the flexibility that companies can give to their workers whenever they adopt a co-working work style. If you adopt a co-working work style, you can have what they call a hub and spoke model. Your main office in one place, but your workers can work from anywhere that they want all over town. If they need to go somewhere to meet a client, then they have a place to drop in and drop out of, or need to go somewhere else to have a meeting. That's what they can do. Of course, they can maintain their HQ. And then people can go back there for, big company events and so forth. But people really need amenities all over town to be much more effective in how they work, and also be nearer to their homes and families, children and whatnot. And that's really going to be, this hybrid work style is really going to be how you are able to retain your talent. And of course, for the younger generation, it's about, giving them a nice office space, but also friends in the office space that can support each other. We call this our community USP. At work, we are very strong in community, and that's what they're giving to their staff as well.
Part of the conversations that I've had with some of the guests on this show is the high reliability and high reliance on flexibility, and work from home is still a key feature of this. We can share some of the surveys that have been touted about, but generally speaking, the want from the workforce in terms of the ability to work from home is actually higher than ever before. Mm-hmm. How does that impact, say, for instance, this collaborative work or notion of companies in trying to build an office environment? Is this a negative towards companies trying to get their people together and build a collaborative office workspace environment?
I think it is a better way of working for the company as well, because people don't just work in one way 5 days a week. At different times of the day, they may need to meet a client, or at different times they may have some collaborative work, which is a meeting, so they come together in a co-working space to collaborate and whatnot. But sometimes they need quiet work time. Dedicated time, you need to go and write a report or something like that. You go into a little quiet corner in the co-working space and you get your work done there. Once you are finished, you come and meet your boss in the meeting room or your team to brief them, and then you need a collaborative space. So the spaces are no longer kind of like a huge call center with desks and that's it. It is actually different kind of spaces in the office for you to do the kind of work you need to do when you need to do it.
The first time a news broke out in terms of Wuhan COVID was in January 2020. We are in January 2023. So that's a whole 3 years of us experiencing COVID-19. And I cannot see this issue being abated in the years to come. And because of this, we've explored some of the configurations in terms of percentages of work from home and office and many others. Where do you feel the trajectory is going to be like when it comes to collaborative workspace and the ratio it has with working from home?
I think it goes hand in hand, whereby you work from home sometimes, some days of the week, and then some days of the week you go to a space nearby to meet or to have a meeting, and some days you go into HQ. So
is there a perfect mix when it comes to this, particularly when it comes to your clients?
The perfect mix they tout in a Harvard study is a 3-2 mix. That means 3 days in office, 2 days from anywhere, and then 2 days weekend. Of course, you need to tweak that for your company.
Yes.
Different teams have different work styles. So marketing teams, they need to collaborate a lot because it's creative. Anything creative, they need to be there. So they would need this kind of collaborative workspaces more. Say finance teams and accounting teams, they can work from home because all the paperwork is now online. So if they need dedicated time to do the accounting, they can work from home. But sometimes also they don't want, because there's a lot of distractions in the home. So then they will go to a quiet corner or whatnot, and then they need to print something in the co-working space, and then they go home.
And of course, global risks are still withstanding. We're looking at inflation, we're looking at wage impediment. How does this impact, say, for instance, businesses that are coming to your workspace?
So businesses that are coming to our workspace need to be very agile. They cannot plan for all these things anymore, as they can see during COVID. If they had aggressively hired pre-COVID, they have signed a long-term lease with their landlord, they may be in financial trouble when something big happens. So they want to pay as you go. So they don't want to commit too much. And flexibility in real estate, flex offices, co-working spaces, give that flexibility. So that's why for people in the know, they are very, very interested in this kind of sort of business. Even during downtime, they'll be interested. So actually, we raised money in the middle of COVID, and we got 7 follow-on investors. That's so they are in the know of the industry. So even during a bad economy, they are willing to invest.
And of course, the risk of the other global risks include inflation. Do you feel that it's time for you to think about lowering your cost to your clients? Is that part of the plan as well?
Yeah, that's always part of the plan. We need to lower the cost to the point.
While maintaining the same amenities and services, of course.
Yes, and more. And even with the inflation, say of everything, right? We also have to try our best to control costs, because this is a back office product for clients. They would, they don't like to spend a lot on their office space. It's not revenue generating. So we have to be very cognizant, but they need to be productive. So if they need something, you need to give it to them. They will pay for it because they need it. Proper printer, proper meeting rooms. You need to have a lot of meeting rooms because there's never enough, right? If you go to a space there's not enough of that, you're not productive, you cannot do your job, you cannot make money. So you need to give them what they need, but not more. The bells and the whistles we find don't really work. They don't really need a marble table or anything like that. That's a model that doesn't work. They need a very productive space to work, and the internet has to be great, that kind of thing, and they will pay for those things, but not more.
What about traffic? It's always hassle.
Yes, traffic is...
So this is, sorry, let me just add on to that, right? You need to have a co-working space that is central towards any hub and spoke model that you have.
Yes.
You need to have it highly accessible. That means you're putting yourself in the crossfire of traffic, right?
You can control the traffic by being right next to a train station. All our outlets, you can throw a stone and hit the train station. So a lot of your staff might take the train. And then the other thing is that we do not have our outlets in downtown only. A lot of it is spread out, so it's nearer to their homes. So like I say, a company may take a space in a suburb because they want that team to be working from there because they are living nearer to that. So the traffic is reduced. So we are very cognizant of the fact that how you turn into to the building. Is it you're going to be sitting in traffic or not? This kind of little things, as well as say parking. If you drive to work, how long you have to spend to look for parking, or your building has lots of parking. So that's how we deal with traffic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Stephanie, final words before we part our ways?
Final word is, I want to sort of let people know this is coming and this is very exciting, right? Like I mentioned, the CBRE are all saying this is mainstream, a mainstream way of working, and it's going to make the lives of workers better, which will really make an impact for a country's economy, workers' happiness as well. They get to work the way they want to work. And this is very sustainable because the companies are saving a lot and also getting a lot of flexibility from this style. Therefore, they want to do it. And they are making their workers happy, which means that they have this very good work style for everyone to go forward in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That was Stephanie Ping, the CEO of WORQ. If you missed any part of this interview, just head on to astroawani.com. Look for these kind of resources there. Search Notepad or our sister show, Niaga Awani, which has daily or weekdays every 9 a.m. in the morning. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Catch you in the next one.